Our first item for the evening is a presentation on data center environmental impacts delivered by Vice Chair Pistone and All AI Consulting. Sorry.
And it's pronounced ally, right? Cool.
Awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. It's first time you read something. Yeah, I have a bio and then I'll just turn it over to our speaker. Yeah, thanks everybody who joined today. We have a guest speaker. Mashika Allgood is an AI ethicist, educator, and the founder of Ally Consulting, LLC, a platform for providing AI education to people with non-technical backgrounds. She's an active member of the IEEE, the electrical engineering folks, and is currently a subject matter expert on the IEEE P7100 Environmental Impacts of Artificial Intelligence Working Group. Mashika taught an original course, Ethics in AI Product Design, for the fully employed MBA program at UC Irvine's Paul Merage School of Business, and currently teaches AI governance, risk management, and compliance for the Juris Master's program at the Florida State University College of Law. Mashika holds an LLM in litigation and dispute resolution from the George Washington University School of Law, a Juris Doctorate from Florida State University, and a Master's in International Business from Florida International University. And I will turn it over to her for our presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I sound so much cooler on paper. So I've lived in California for nearly 12 years now, and I've lived in Sunnyvale for 11 of those years. I own my small business in Sunnyvale, so it was very exciting for me to be allowed to come here and have this presentation with you guys today. So I want to start this discussion with a level set on the framework I'll be operating within. We all bring our whole selves to these topics, and given how fractured and opaque the discussion around AI is in general, it's easy for people to be sitting in the same room, listening to the same speaker, and come away with radically different understandings of what was said. So I want to give you some broad guidelines for how I approach this topic as context for what you hear in the rest of this discussion. First, this conversation isn't about all data centers. It is specifically about AI factories. We'll spend the next slide discussing the various ways that AI factories are fundamentally different from traditional data centers, but at a high level, AI factories are massive data center campuses that are specifically built to host generative AI workloads. They don't store your email data unless they're using it for Gen AI training. They don't manage your online banking activity. They don't store your Netflix library, and they don't manage your government data. They only store and manage data that is being used for Gen AI training. Those are the types of facilities we'll be discussing today. Second, my work is focused on the current impacts of generative AI data centers and communities. So I have to focus on the actual impacts people are experiencing today or can expect to experience in the next 2 or 3 years, which means I have to focus on here and now technology. When a company files their first permit request for a data center, they aren't looking for permission to build in 5 years. They start the permitting process 6 to 18 months before they intend to start building in earnest. So the proposals communities are considering today are intended to be fully operational within the next 2 to 3 years. A cool new experiment or a current small-scale implementation of a novel solution is very unlikely to achieve the level of reliability at scale that would justify a data center operator foregoing tried and true technology to implement the cool new idea. It doesn't make business sense, and we aren't seeing that kind of adoption happen in real life. So my talk focuses on the tech that is currently available because that's what companies are most likely to employ, and that's what our city will have to contend with. Finally, lots of conversations around AI are aspirational. What the tech could achieve given unlimited resources and time. Its potential given uninterrupted progress. But the City of Sunnyvale has limits, hard physical limits to our local resources and our personal and communal ability to absorb negative environmental impacts. Hard financial limits to our city budget and to each of us residents' ability to absorb additional expenses. And hard structural limits to our infrastructure and the amount of electricity and water we can supply and manage. This conversation cannot be situated in a boundless world because Sunnyvale exists in a reality that is constrained by physics. So this discussion will be conducted in full acknowledgement of those constraints. The The key structural differences between traditional data centers and AI data centers are caused by the difference in workloads. Traditional data centers overwhelmingly run ETL-based processes. That's extract, transform, and load. Essentially, they store information passively and take action when requested, like when you log into your banking app or open a new document or send an email. These are start and stop processes that run on traditional computer chips called CPUs. AI data centers run generative AI training and inference processes. These processes don't stop and start. The system never rests. It is a constant 24/7 workload. And they run those processes on GPUs, which are way more powerful and run way hotter than CPUs. The difference in the intensity of the workloads and the hardware they're run on is why traditional data centers have never been an issue, while AI data centers create significant environmental and health impacts for the communities that host them. AI data centers run high-intensity workloads around the clock on chips that generate intense heat, hundreds of thousands of chips running at over 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Since California's energy mix is nearly 70% natural gas and solar thermal, providing power for these facilities requires massive amounts of water and burning exorbitant amounts of natural gas. Also, each facility requires additional water to cool the chips in the facility itself. And unlike golf courses, these facilities evaporate 80% of the water they use. And the water that's discharged from the facility includes a toxic mix of chemicals that poses risk to downstream water sources. AI data centers require backup generators to ensure that they meet their reliability standards. Those generators emit a variety of health impacting pollutants. The fans used to cool the facilities produce a constant low frequency hum. Bring your own natural gas generators produce a constant high frequency hum. And the multi-tiered lighting systems spill light pollution for miles. All of these pollutants have real health impacts on the people who live in the neighborhoods that surround these facilities, as well as their animals and any surrounding wildlife. And each of these impacts is exacerbated by the sheer scale of these facilities. Unlike traditional data centers that were typically a single, nondescript warehouse, AI data centers are campuses of multiple massive warehouses. And each of those warehouses can house thousands to hundreds of thousands of GPUs. Each of these campuses can require the same amount of water and power as a small city, which is why there are real concerns that need to be considered when evaluating the benefit of these facilities to our moderately sized city. So let's look at our city. Sunnyvale currently has 8 traditional data centers. We haven't built any AI data centers in our city yet, but I understand that we may have gotten our first request for one, or at least the new owner of the Brookfield facility is indicating that they may want to transition that facility into an AI data center. So it's a good time to look at how permitting these facilities might impact our city. While there are a host of impacts we can look at, for today's presentation, I want to concentrate on concerns around local air quality, water quality, and wastewater treatment. Next. AI data centers require much more electricity than traditional data centers, typically 20 megawatts or more. Facilities are co-locating high voltage substations on campus on the campuses so they can skip the years-long queues to connect directly to the grid. Building the high voltage infrastructure, which is specialized poles, substations, switches, etc., is extremely expensive. PG&E is managing the vast majority of the build-out in the Bay Area, and they're passing the cost on to ratepayers through their rate case applications. Currently, there are no state or local ratepayer protections to ensure that data center operators bear the full cost of these infrastructure investments. Every data center proposal is presented with an overwhelming sense of immediacy. Sunnyvale is largely reliant on PG&E for electricity, and PG&E has been expanding natural gas generation to service these facilities because it's the fastest option. Silicon Valley Clean Energy could likely expand its sourcing capacity to accommodate AI data center power loads, but not on the 18 to 24-month time frame developers are demanding. There's a lot of conversation about replacing energy-intensive cooling systems with evaporative water cooling systems to save on data center energy requirements. But those conversations don't consider the energy required to produce potable recycled water. Sunnyvale's recycled water treatment system is largely powered by local cogeneration. We burn the methane biogas that is produced during wastewater treatment. So more recycled water production will mean more local biogas generation. It's clear that both PG&E and Silicon Valley Power are having significant difficulty managing the scale of energy requested by prospective data center developers. So developers are increasingly proposing to build their own power. But bring your own power in Sunnyvale would mean locating a natural gas plant on the data center campus. If we look to Data Center Alley right up Central Expressway or the clustered build out across San Jose, it's clear that the data center driven industry corridor of today is not on the outskirts of town. Data centers are increasingly being built deep within our communities. So bring your own power would mean building gas plants across from houses, schools, our sterling parks, and our places of worship. And the location of power generation is the driver of data center driven air quality concerns. AI data centers operate with 5 nines uptime. That's 99.999%, which means they may only go offline for 5 minutes every year. Any variability in connected power generation is accounted for with backup generation. And data centers in the Bay Area almost exclusively utilize industrial diesel generators. Those generators emit as much pollution as a diesel locomotive. And that's on the energy or the pollution saving setting. A single data center facility may rely on 40 to 50 3.25 megawatt diesel generators. Diesel generators emit a toxic cocktail of air pollution, including PM 2.5, PM10, nitrogen oxides, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide. Natural gas is considered cleaner than diesel in that it produces many of the same pollutants, but at lower concentrations. So data centers pose significant air quality concerns based on their backup and bring your own power generation systems. Data center air pollutants cannot be considered in isolation as they layer on top of pre-existing air pollution. The Bay Area's industrial history left a legacy of air pollution that we are still attempting to address. And while the Bay Area Air District hosts air quality monitors throughout the Bay Area, there are no monitors in Sunnyvale or Santa Clara or Northern San Jose. The nearest air quality monitors they list on their website are in Fremont or South San Jose. Layering additional pollutants on our currently unknown pre-existing air pollution is even more concerning given that Sunnyvale is under a near constant inversion layer. Essentially, high pressure above the Bay Area keeps air from escaping for hours nearly every day. This compounds the health impacts of air pollution since we have to rebreathe any pollutants until the inversion layer lifts. It also creates a shared airspace across the entire Bay Area where we all breathe our neighboring cities' pollutants along with our own. This is why it's so important for the Bay Area in general and Sunnyvale specifically to have a plan to manage the amount of generators that are hosted locally. In 2004, the California Air Resources Board adopted the Airborne Toxic Control Measure for stationary compression ignition engines in an effort to reduce diesel particulate matter emissions from diesel generators by approximately 90% from year 2000 levels. As part of that process, they projected that there would be around 13,000 diesel generators in the entire state by 2020. The actual count has not been updated since 2000, decades before the AI data center build-out began. Rough estimates of the pace of diesel generator installation driven by data centers indicates that we will likely outpace those estimates by 65% before the end of the decade. These concerns around pre-existing pollution, the inversion layer, and the lack of clarity on the number and monthly usage of local diesel generators led me to join the Center for Biological Diversity and a host of other organizations in drafting a petition to the Bay Area Air Quality District, urging them to update their rules to better incorporate the impacts of AI data centers into their planning, forecasting, and rulemaking. Also, while Sunnyvale's CEQA GHG emissions thresholds and guidance document is only 2 years old, the emissions inventory in that document is from 2019. If we were to start permitting AI data centers in the city, we'd need to revisit that inventory and consider adding diesel generators as a distinct sector. According to Sunnyvale's 2025 Urban Water Management Plan, we have virtually no access to groundwater storage. We are almost wholly reliant on treated surface water from two wholesalers, San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and the Santa Clara Valley Water District. As a net water purchaser, Sunnyvale has little control over vendor capacity. AI data centers require hundreds of thousands to millions of gallons of water a day during the hottest months of the year. Any pricing changes to accommodate data center-driven capacity increases would be borne by all Sunnyvale ratepayers. There's a lot of discussion of using free cooling, which is essentially bringing in outside air, as a solution to lower data center water use. But free cooling is only available or viable when temperatures are under 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And electricity-heavy cooling isn't practical on the hottest days of the year because the surge in air conditioning demand across the city drives up electricity costs. So evaporative cooling is the default on the hottest days. So why not use recycled water? It's cheaper and won't further endanger the Santa Clara subbasin. But as you can see from the planning document, Sunnyvale produces very little recycled water. Currently, our recycled water system supplies an average of 1 million gallons per day. And that water is used to support over 100 services within the city limits, as well as Moffett Field and Apple Campus 2. Our most recent recycled water use projection doesn't specifically account for data centers and commercial usage and assumes minimal growth across the commercial category through 2030. So, in short, the City of Sunnyvale has not planned for the significant capacity increases that would be necessary to support AI data centers with recycled water. Finally, there's been a lot of conversation around no water and low water cooling solutions. But these solutions are at the server level. They replace water in the closed loop systems within the data center facility with ethylene glycol, hydrocarbon coolants, or dielectric fluorocarbons. But you can't replace water in the rooftop evaporative cooling systems with antifreeze, motor oil, or forever chemicals. And most of the water a data center uses is through the rooftop evaporative cooling system, not the closed loop within the facility. So no water and low water solutions may allow you to replace 500,000 gallons of water within the facility, which is a big win, but it does nothing to address the hundreds of thousands to millions of gallons a day that are being run through the evaporative cooling system on the roof. Next. Which brings us to wastewater treatment. I recently wrote a pretty well-received research paper on the impact of AI data centers that AI data centers are having on water infrastructure management in Georgia, specifically Atlanta. And I dedicated nearly 60% of the paper to discussing wastewater management. As I mentioned before, data centers withdraw hundreds of thousands to millions of gallons of water per day for their evaporative cooling systems. 80% of that water is lost to evaporation, and the remaining 20% is typically discharged directly to local wastewater treatment plants. That's tens of thousands of gallons of wastewater that municipal facilities need to manage. In order for local facilities to be resilient to data center flows, they have to be built to handle peak volume. But these facilities don't run at peak most of the time. So while the wastewater facility has to be designed with enough capacity to manage peak flow, much of that capacity will be underutilized for large portions of the year. As part of my research, I looked into the chemicals that are used to treat water through its life cycle in the facility. Facilities use a mix of chemicals to prevent scaling, address hardness, manage pH and alkalinity, prevent microorganism growth and corrosion, and clean up hydrocarbon leaks and fouling. I developed a list of 14 different chemicals that are commonly used for data center water treatment, many of which are toxic, most of which are regulated, and a few new chemicals that haven't been fully studied in humans. Data centers aren't required to provide a list of chemicals to wastewater treatment facilities to ensure that they have the technology to treat all of the substances that will be present in data center discharges. And any chemical that makes it through untreated poses a risk to downstream systems. Finally, data centers don't discharge water at a steady rate. Data center discharge is wholly dependent on their cooling system choices, and data centers change their cooling systems based on outside conditions. On the hottest days, they run their evaporative cooling at full tilt. On cooler days, they may not use evaporative cooling at all, which makes it difficult for wastewater treatment facilities to find other customers to utilize that unused capacity. Because other customers, industrial customers, don't tend to need random peaks of capacity just during data center downtowns. Sunnyvale recently received funding for the Sunnyvale Clean Water Program to upgrade the city's water pollution control plant. The program consists of 34 long-term projects with an overall cost of $1.4 billion. If Sunnyvale decides to begin permitting AI data centers, then they would need to revisit the planned project list and consider the addition of projects designed to provide the city both the volume and technical capacity to manage AI data center discharge. Next. Hold on. I've been engaged in a project with Berkeley's Human Rights Lab and Elenian's Dreaming Collaborative to map out the regulatory process for getting a data center approved in California. The process is designed to work in three phases. First, the land is procured, along with the permitting, then power secured, and finally water secured. The CEQA process is built on this framework with the assumption that local authorities will be the lead agency and state and special district authorities will act as responsible agencies. However, the reality has worked a bit differently. First, the land is procured. Then, sometimes before even initial zoning is secured, developers try to secure power. Developers have been applying for small power plant exemptions for their backup generator installations before they even formally present their plans to the city for permitting. The SPPE process triggers a streamlined CEQA review where the California Energy Commission is the lead agency and the city and special districts are responsible agencies. This has created a situation where the local air quality management district can have their expertise overruled by a state agency. And when the CEC makes a finding of no significant impacts, city governments have been accepting those findings unchallenged. We found significant gaps in the CEC's environmental impact review process that would pose significant concerns to the city of Sunnyvale. First, wastewater isn't directly considered in the CEC's environmental review process, only stormwater runoff. Sunnyvale would need to engage in an independent review of wastewater capacity and technological capability, similar to the CEQA water supply assessment process. Second, Sunnyvale would need to ensure that the thresholds in the GHG emissions threshold and guidance would be considered official standards. The city may also want to consider working with county health to develop its own official air quality standards, given that one of the key areas of concerns that we raised in the BAAD petition was the limited nature of public health considerations and required air quality monitoring. Currently, developers are only asked to project the rate of cancer within 1,000 feet of the facility in order to determine if there's an air quality impact, a significant air quality impact. But diesel pollution primarily causes respiratory and cardiovascular health issues, and the pollution travels much further than 1,000 feet. Finally, developers seem to have discovered a new loophole in the CEQA process that allows a city to approve a facility without performing an environmental review at all. You may have heard about the newly proposed Google R&D facility. It's intended to have a 250 megawatt substation on campus. That's enough energy to power the entire populations of Sunnyvale and Mountain View combined. But since it's an R&D facility, they don't have to operate at 5 nines availability, which means they won't be using backup generators. And since they aren't using backup generators, they don't have to go through the small power plant exemption process. So the city is the lead agency. At first glance, it would seem that the restoration of the city government as lead agency would make CEQA stronger. But the city of San Jose has decided in their lead agency capacity that a power plant of this size doesn't need an environmental review. Instead, they'll meet their CEQA obligations by considering previous environmental reviews performed on the property in 2000 and 2013 for completely different purposes. So while we're talking about San Jose, let's look a bit closer at the most recent data center they've opened. And we're speaking about San Jose as the case study because San Jose is building more data centers than anyone else, or at least trying to, in the Bay Area. So the Great Oak South Data Center is the first facility to come online as part of San Jose's implementation agreement with PG&E. The 18-acre campus has three 182,000 square foot two-story data center buildings and is powered by 36 3.25 megawatt diesel generators, backup powered. The facility was built in a neighborhood with a pre-existing PM 2.5 levels that were 140% of the EPA's limits. And while San Jose strongly encourages the use of recycled water and renewable energy for these facilities, it does not require it. So they're not using it. As part of our work with the Berkeley Human Rights Center, we looked at the approval process for this facility and focused heavily on the CEC's environmental impact review process. One of the key areas of concern that we uncovered was the interplay between our local air quality experts and the CEC. As lead agency, the CEC overruled concerns raised by BACMD and CARB on the sufficiency of the modeling that was used to produce the finding that the facility would have no significant impact on local air quality. We also found significant oversights in the process. First, the developer was requesting 1,000 acre-foot of water per year to run evaporative cooling as its primary cooling system. When the CEC pushed back on that request, thankfully, the developer indicated that they would switch to an electricity-based cooling system as primary and use evaporative cooling as backup. There were two oversights when that switch happened. First, the developer didn't change their PUE numbers to reflect the higher electricity usage that would be required to support the electricity-based cooling system. Second, since evaporative cooling was no longer the primary cooling system, the developer was not required to perform a water study, even though that evaporative system will run at peak performance on the hottest days of the year. The second and most glaring gap was the failure to include the Santa Teresa substation as part of the environmental impact review. Unlike most AI data centers in the Bay Area, the Great Oak South facility was not intending to build their own substation. They intended to rely on a substation that had already been approved by the city. According to the documents, the substation had already been approved and built and therefore didn't need to be considered as part of the environmental review. However, the Santa Teresa substation doesn't exist. There's an address for it on the City of San Jose's website, but the address is in the middle of two houses down the street. So there's currently a 99 megawatt data center plugged directly into the grid with no known substation to provide the safe distribution and circuit breaker functions for all of that power. The City of San Jose doesn't have a process for assessing or reviewing the sufficiency of agency-led EIR processes, so none of these significant infrastructure or public health issues have been addressed. The facility is operating, and the city has moved on to the next project. I know that last slide was kind of jarring, but it highlights the nature of the question AI data centers pose to cities. These data centers require city leaders to consider a truly fundamental question: what kind of city do we want to be? Due to their extreme consumptive nature and the resultant pressure they put on infrastructure and public health, data centers require cities to make sometimes draconian trade-offs between business interest and public health. San Jose has decided it wants to be the center of whatever tech comes next. The pursuit of that goal requires a willingness to make significant public health trade-offs. City of Santa Clara is already established as a tech leader and is looking to maintain its position. So the scale may be tipped towards business, but not nearly at the level of San Jose. Our neighbors are making trade-offs based on their values and intent. We'll have to do the same. So the question before us, before you commissioners specifically, and before any city leadership is, what kind of city does Sunnyvale want to be? And what kinds of trade-offs are we willing to make to become that city? I thank you for your time, and I'm open to questions.
I thank you for the great presentation. I'll open it to my colleagues for discussion.